My daughter took over my medical papers. Then my doctor found the missing page. My daughter Melissa said she only wanted to help after my fall. She took my folder of medical papers from my kitchen table and told me, "You've been through enough. Mom, let me handle the boring parts." A week later, she stood in my doctor's office and calmly told him I was forgetting things, getting confused, and unable to make decisions for myself. Then Dr. Patel turned the last page of the packet over. "There should be another page attached here," he said. Melissa went still, because the missing page was the one that proved I had passed every memory test and the one she had removed before trying to convince my doctor I needed someone else to control my life. If someone spoke for you, when you could still speak for yourself, would you stay quiet? Subscribe and share your answer below. I remember the silence after Dr. Patel said those words. It was not a dramatic kind of silence. No one shouted. No papers flew across the room. The clock above the sink kept ticking, and the little fish tank in the corner kept bubbling, as if nothing important had changed. But Melissa's hand tightened around the leather folder in her lap. I noticed because I had raised that girl. I knew every version of her silence. When she was 5, she went quiet after sneaking a spoonful of cake batter before dinner. When she was 16, she went quiet after backing William's old Buick into the mailbox. And when she was 38, she went quiet after telling me she had only borrowed money from her brother-in-law for groceries, when really she had used it to cover 3 months of missed car payments. Melissa did not go quiet when she was innocent. Dr. Patel looked at her, then at me. "Mrs. Clark," he said gently, "did you bring the full cognitive assessment packet with you?" I opened my mouth, but Melissa answered first. "Yes, of course. This is everything the rehabilitation center gave us." Her voice was smooth, too smooth. I had fallen 6 weeks earlier on the back steps of my home in Willow Creek, Ohio. It was a cold April morning, and I had been carrying a basket of towels toward the laundry room when my shoe caught on the edge of a loose stone. 1 second, I was thinking about whether the hydrangeas had survived the late frost. The next, I was lying on my side with my hip throbbing and one wet towel wrapped around my wrist. I did not break anything. The emergency room doctor called it a mild concussion, a bruised hip, and a warning that I needed to slow down for a while. At 68, I did not enjoy being told to slow down, but I listened. I used the cane the physical therapist gave me. I let my neighbor, Mrs. Daniels, bring soup twice a week. I accepted rides to the pharmacy. And when Melissa offered to stay with me for a few days after I came home, I told myself I was lucky. That was what mothers do, isn't it? We tell ourselves our children's presence is love before we ask whether it is control. For the first few days, Melissa was attentive in all the ways a daughter should be. She changed the sheets on my bed. She made coffee in the morning. She put fresh batteries in the smoke detector that had been chirping for nearly a month. She even found William's old radio in the garage and brought it inside because she remembered how I liked to listen to jazz while cooking. I watched her standing at my kitchen counter, moving around with the confidence of someone who had grown up in that house. For a little while, I saw only my little girl, not the woman who had been struggling after her divorce, not the woman who had called me 3 times in 1 year asking for help with rent, not the woman who had recently lost a job at a medical billing company and insisted it had been because her supervisor didn't appreciate loyalty. Just my daughter. Then, the small things started. The first thing she moved was my mail. I had always kept it in a ceramic bowl by the front door. Bills went in one pile. Church flyers went in another. Coupons went straight into the recycling. It was a simple system, and it had worked for me since William and I bought that house 34 years earlier. One afternoon, I went looking for a statement from my credit union. The bowl was empty. "Melissa," I called from the hallway. "Did you move the mail?" She appeared from the kitchen holding my tea kettle. I put it in the office. Mom, you shouldn't have to worry about paperwork right now. I wasn't worried. I needed the statement. I can get it. I can get it too. She gave me that soft, tired smile people use when they have already decided you are being difficult. Of course you can, she said. I just don't want you overdoing it. I let it go. That was my first mistake. The second thing she moved was my folder. It was an old brown accordion folder with faded tabs. Medical, insurance, house, taxes. William. I had kept important papers in it for years. After William died, that folder became the place where I put anything I could not afford to lose. His pension information, the deed to our house, the letter from the Veterans Affairs Office explaining part of his benefits, my health directives, my identification documents. I did not think of it as a treasure chest. I thought of it as a life organized into paper. Melissa found it on the kitchen table while I was doing my therapy exercises. Oh, Mom, she said, picking it up. Why is all this out? I was sorting some things. You need rest, not bills and insurance forms. It helps me to keep up with things. She tucked the folder under her arm. I'll put it somewhere safe. I remember looking at her, waiting for her to tell me where. She did not. By the time I asked, she had already walked down the hall. The next morning, I found the folder inside the top drawer of my desk in the guest room. Not where I kept it. Not where I would naturally look. I opened it. Everything seemed to be there. At least, I thought it was. A week later, Melissa drove me to my follow-up appointment with Dr. Patel. He had been my primary care doctor for nearly 11 years. He had treated William after his heart surgery. He had called me personally the morning after William died. Not because he had to, but because he knew I was alone. Dr. Patel was a practical man. He did not talk in circles. He was kind without acting sentimental about it. After my fall, he had ordered a routine cognitive screening because of the concussion. I had not been frightened by it. I had forgotten a few things in the first days after the accident. But so would anyone after a hard fall and a night in the emergency room. At the rehabilitation center, a specialist named Dr. Lynn had tested me twice. Words, dates, patterns, a short list of errands, questions about money, medication, and daily routines. At the end, she smiled and said, "Mrs. Clark, you're doing very well. You were shaken, but there is no sign that you cannot manage your own affairs." I remembered those exact words because they had embarrassed me a little. I had told her I still balanced my checkbook by hand, and she had laughed kindly. "That is not a symptom," she said. "That is a preference." So when Melissa began telling Dr. Patel that morning that I was slipping, I felt something inside me shift. She repeats questions, Melissa said. She gets overwhelmed by financial things. She left the stove on last week. I turned the burner off after the soup boiled. I said. Melissa looked at me with patient concern. "Mom, you don't remember. I came in, and it was still on." That is not true. Dr. Patel did not take sides. He simply asked questions. "How often has this happened?" Melissa sighed. "It's hard to say. She gets defensive when I bring it up." I looked at him. I get defensive when someone says things about me that are not true. He nodded once. Then he asked Melissa for the rehabilitation paperwork. And that was how we came to that quiet office. That turned over last page. And the space in the packet where a missing sheet should have been. Melissa swallowed. Maybe the center forgot to include it. Dr. Patel's face did not change. "Mrs. Clark had a complete assessment. Their records indicate 7 pages. This packet has 6. Melissa laughed lightly, but it sounded brittle. Then, I suppose they made a clerical mistake? No, Doctor, Patel said. Their office scanned the packet before discharge. I can request it directly. For the first time that day, Melissa looked afraid. Not worried. Not tired. Afraid. She stood so quickly that her chair scraped the floor. Mom is exhausted, she said. Maybe we should talk about this another time. I held out my hand. Give me the folder. Melissa stared at me. It took longer than it should have. Then she placed it in my hand. I felt the worn leather under my fingertips. I felt the weight of it. And suddenly I understood that the folder had not been moved because I needed help organizing papers. It had been moved because Melissa had been looking for something. Or removing something. Doctor, Patel asked his nurse to call the rehabilitation center. Then he turned to me. Rebecca, I'd like to speak with you alone for a few minutes. Melissa opened her mouth. She needs me here. Doctor. Patel's voice stayed calm. Mrs. Clark can decide that for herself. I looked at my daughter. I would like to speak with him alone. Her eyes flashed. It was only for a second. But I saw it. Then she forced a smile and stepped into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind her. Doctor. Patel folded his hands on the desk. Has anyone asked you to sign legal documents since your fall? The question landed harder than I expected. I thought about the envelope Melissa had set beside my breakfast 2 days earlier. I had been tired that morning. My hip hurt. I had taken my medication, and it made me sleepy. She had said, just some forms so I can help with appointments and insurance. I had started to read them. Melissa has said, Mom, it's standard. You don't have to make everything so hard. I had signed only 1 page that day. An authorization allowing her to speak with my insurance company. At least, I believed that was all I had signed. But I remembered something else. A second document beneath it. A page with a bold heading. Durable power of attorney. I had pushed it away. What is this? I had asked. Melissa had covered it with her hand. Nothing urgent. We can deal with it later. I looked at Dr. Patel now. She asked me to sign something. I said slowly. I didn't sign it. I don't think I did. Did she take copies of your identification? She said she needed my driver's license for a pharmacy account. Did she have access to your medical folder before today? Yes. His expression hardened not with anger, but with concern. Rebecca, I'm going to make a note in your chart that you have not been found incapable of making medical decisions. I'm also going to ask the rehabilitation center to send the complete assessment directly to you and to my office. I gripped the folder on my lap. What else is she trying to do? I don't know, he said honestly. But I would not sign anything further until you have someone independent review it. When I left the exam room, Melissa was standing beside the window at the end of the hallway. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest. Are you happy now? She asked. I stopped. What does that mean? It means you made me look like some kind of villain for trying to help you. You told my doctor I could not make decisions. Because I'm worried about you. You removed a page from my medical papers? Her face changed again. I did not remove anything. Then why were you scared when he asked about it? Melissa stepped closer, lowering her voice. You have no idea how hard this has been on me. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. My fall had happened to me. My bruised hip hurt when I walked. My home was the one being rearranged. My medical records were the ones being handled. And somehow, Melissa had found a way to make herself the injured person. I am going home, I said. Mum, please, don't be dramatic. I am going home. During the drive, she barely spoke. I watched the familiar streets pass outside the window. Willow Creek was green that time of year. Lawns had just begun to look alive again. The bakery on Main Street had a chalkboard sign out front, advertising lemon scones. 2 children rode bicycles past the old library where I had worked for almost 27 years. I remembered shelving books there when Melissa was small. She would sit behind the circulation desk and draw pictures while I finished my shift. In every picture, our family had a sun in the corner, a yellow house, 3 stick figures holding hands. Me, William, Melissa. I wondered when a child stops seeing her mother as a person and starts seeing her as a door that might open into money, property, or control. By the time we reached my house, I had made one decision. I would not accuse Melissa of anything I could not prove. Not yet. I had spent too many years watching people ruin families with guesses and angry words. If my daughter had made a mistake, I wanted facts. If she had lied, I wanted facts. If she had done something worse, I wanted facts more than I wanted tears. Melissa helped me out of the car. "I'll make you lunch," she said. "No, thank you, Mom." I said no. She stared at me, then walked inside ahead of me. That alone bothered me. Melissa had never knocked at my house. She had a key because she was my daughter. But suddenly, I realized I could not remember the last time I had seen that key, or how many copies she had made. I waited until she was in the kitchen before I went to the guest room. My desk drawer was open. I knew it was open because I never left it that way. Inside, my folder was gone. I stood there for a moment, looking at the empty drawer. Then I heard Melissa's voice from the kitchen. "Mom, do you want tea?" I closed the drawer quietly. "Yes," I called back. "Tea sounds nice." That afternoon, while Melissa was in the shower, I called Mrs. Daniels next door. "Could you come over for a few minutes?" I asked. She did not ask questions. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. She arrived with a container of chicken salad and a worried look. I led her to the guest room and showed her the empty drawer. "I need you to sit with me while I check a few things," I said. "Anything you need?" "Rebecca." We began with the obvious places. The filing cabinet in my office, the china cabinet drawer, the hall closet, the storage bench near the front door. No folder. Then I checked my desk for my spare house key. Kone. My stomach tightened. Mrs. Daniels put a hand on my shoulder. "Do you want me to call the police?" "Not yet." I was still trying to think like a mother. Still trying to give Melissa a chance to tell the truth before I turned this into something no one could take back. Then I opened the drawer where I kept William's old address book. It was there, but the blue envelope underneath it was missing. Inside that envelope had been copies of the house deed, my insurance policy, and the last letter William wrote to me before he went into hospice. The deed and insurance papers mattered for practical reasons. The letter mattered for my heart. I sat down hard in the desk chair. "Mrs. Daniels looked toward the kitchen. "Rebecca," she said quietly, "what exactly did your daughter take?" I looked at the open drawer, at the bare space where that blue envelope had been, and at the closed door down the hall. Then I remembered the page Melissa had tried to slide under my hand 2 days earlier. Durable power of attorney. And I understood that the missing medical page might have been only the beginning, because someone who wanted to make you look incapable did not need your permission. They only needed enough people to believe them. And, somewhere inside my own house, my daughter had hidden the papers she planned to use against me. The first thing I did after Mrs. Daniels left was lock myself in the bathroom and cry. Not because I was helpless. Not because I believed Melissa had already won. I cried because there is a particular kind of pain that comes when your own child looks at your love for them and sees an opening. For years, I had told myself Melissa's struggles were temporary. The divorce had been hard on her. The bills had piled up. The job market had been unfair. Her ex-husband had left her with debt and a daughter who needed more than Melissa could afford. There was always a reason, always a season, always one more emergency that made me reach for my purse, my checkbook, my pantry, or my spare room. But standing in that bathroom, with my medical folder missing and my house papers gone, I had to face the truth. This was not a daughter asking for help. This was a daughter trying to make sure I could no longer say no. I washed my face, straightened my cardigan, and walked back into the kitchen. Melissa had made tea exactly the way I liked it. 2 tea bags, a little honey, and a slice of lemon. For a second, the sight of it almost made me lose my nerve. She looked up from the table. "Are you feeling better?" "I'm fine," I said. "You looked upset." I was thinking. Melissa sat across from me and placed both hands around her mug. "Mom, I know today was difficult. Dr. Patel is cautious. That's all. Doctors have to document everything. You told him I was confused. I said you've had some moments." "What moments?" She looked down. "You forgot that I brought you dinner on Monday. You brought dinner on Tuesday." "See?" she said quickly. "You're mixing things up." I stared at her. "No, I'm not. You brought spaghetti on Tuesday because Monday was the day Mrs. Daniels drove me to physical therapy." Melissa's lips pressed together. Then she smiled as though I had proven her point instead of mine. "Mom, you don't have to fight me. I'm on your side." That sentence was the one that frightened me most. Because when someone is truly on your side, they do not need to keep saying it. I took a slow sip of tea. "Where is my medical folder?" Her eyes lifted to mine. "Your folder?" "The brown one from the guest room desk." "I thought you had it." "No, I don't." Melissa leaned back in her chair. "Maybe you misplaced it." There it was. Not a denial. Not concern. A little sentence placed carefully between us. "Maybe you misplaced it." I had worked in a library for nearly 3 decades. I knew the power of a repeated phrase. If you said something often enough, people began to remember the phrase instead of the truth. Forgetful. Confused. Misplaced it. I set my mug down. "I want you to leave." Melissa blinked. "What?" "I want you to go home." "Mom, I'm staying here because you need help." I said I want you to go home. Her face shifted from surprise to anger so quickly that I almost felt relief. At least the mask had slipped. "You can't be serious." "I am." "You fell down the stairs 6 weeks ago." "I fell on the back steps." "You could fall again." "I might. That does not give you the right to take my papers." "I did not take anything." "Then you will not mind if I call the police and ask them to help me look." Melissa stood so fast that her chair tipped backward. "Are you threatening me?" "I am protecting myself." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her purse. "Fine," she said. "You want to be alone? Be alone." Her voice was sharp now, stripped clean of that soft concern she had carried into Dr. Patel's office. But when she reached the front door, she turned back. "You're making a mistake." "Mom, you don't understand what happens when people get older and refuse help." I stood beside my kitchen table, one hand resting on the chair William used to sit in. "No," I said quietly. "I think I'm beginning to understand exactly what happens." She left without hugging me. The door shut behind her. And for the first time in 6 weeks, my house was quiet. I waited until I saw her car pull away. Then I called Dr. Patel's office. His nurse, Karin, answered. "Mrs. Clark. I'm glad you called. Doctor, Patel asked me to check on you. I need to know something, I said. Has anyone requested copies of my medical records? There was a pause as she checked my chart. Your daughter called 2 days ago, Karen said. She asked whether we had completed a capacity evaluation. My fingers tightened around the phone. What did she tell you? She said you had become increasingly confused and that the family was concerned about your finances. My finance? She asked whether Dr. Sen Patel would be willing to write a letter stating you needed someone to manage your affairs. I closed my eyes. And what did Dr. Patel say? He said he would not make that determination without examining you and reviewing the rehabilitation assessment. A coldness moved through me. Melissa had not simply been worried. She had been gathering opinions, trying to build a story around me, trying to turn my life into a file someone else could control. Karen lowered her voice. Mrs. Clark, I can't give legal advice. But Dr. Patel said you should consider speaking with an attorney you trust. And he asked me to tell you that the complete assessment will be mailed directly to your house tomorrow. Thank you, I said. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The afternoon light fell across the wood the same way it had for years. William had refinished that table himself after we bought it at a church sale. He sanded it in the garage for 3 weekends, then brought it inside with sawdust, still clinging to his shirt. It'll outlast us, he had said. At the time, I told him not to talk that way. Now I wished he were there to tell me what to do. But William had taught me something more useful than a list of answers. He had taught me to slow down when someone wanted me to hurry. Pressure is information. He used to say whenever a salesman came to the door or a contractor demanded cash up front, if they need you to decide before you can think, then they're afraid of what you'll find. Melissa had been pressuring me. She had been trying to make me tired, emotional, embarrassed, and dependent. So I decided I would think. The next morning, I called the only attorney I knew personally. His name was Arthur Bell, and he had helped William and me update our wills nearly 12 years earlier. Arthur was not dramatic. He did not promise miracles. He spoke slowly, wore old-fashioned suspenders, and always looked as though he had just stepped away from a chess game. When I told him what had happened, he asked me to come in that afternoon. Mrs. Daniels Droveme. Arthur's office was above a florist shop on Main Street. The stairway smelled faintly of roses and dust. When I reached his waiting room, he came out himself and held the door open. Rebecca, he said, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Sue and I. Inside his office, I told him everything. The fall, the folder, the missing page, Melissa's conversation with Dr. Patel, the power of attorney form, the missing deed copies in the blue envelope. Arthur took notes without interrupting. When I finished, he folded his hands. Have you signed a power of attorney for Melissa? Not that I know of. That answer concerns me. It concerns me too. He nodded. First, we'll check whether anything has been filed or recorded using your name. Second, we will prepare a written revocation of any prior power of attorney you may have signed, whether intentionally or not. Third, I want you to contact your bank and make sure no one has been added to your accounts without your direct approval. I felt ashamed asking the question. Can she do that? She can try, he said. That is why we document early. Arthur called his assistant and asked her to contact the county recorder's office. Then he turned back to me. Rebecca, I want you to hear this clearly. A child's concern does not erase a parent's rights. If someone believes you need help, there are lawful ways to raise that concern. Secret paperwork and misleading doctors are not among them. Something in my chest loosened. Not because the problem was solved, but because someone had said the truth aloud. Before I left, Arthur gave me a short list. Change the locks. Update passwords. Contact the credit union. Keep a written log of every call, message, or visit from Melissa. Do not meet with her alone if she brings documents. And if she tries to remove property from my house, call the police. That last part was the hardest to hear. Because even after everything, the thought of involving the police made me feel like I was betraying my daughter. Arthur must have seen it on my face. Protecting yourself is not betrayal, he said. It is what allows you to tell the truth without being erased. When Mrs. Daniels drove me home, I found a white envelope taped to my front door. My name was written across the front in Melissa's handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper. It was not my missing medical assessment. It was an appointment notice. A consultation with a family law attorney scheduled for the following Monday morning. Below my name, someone had written, Guardianship and Protective Placement Review. I read it twice. Then a third time. Mrs. Daniels leaned over from beside me. Did you schedule that? No. At the bottom of the notice was a handwritten message. Mom, this is for your own good. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. My hands began to shake. Not from confusion. Not from weakness. From clarity. Melissa had not been waiting to see whether I recovered. She had been preparing to prove that I did not deserve control over my own life. And now I knew she was moving faster than I had imagined. That evening, after Mrs. Daniels went home, I checked the security camera William had installed above the garage door. He had bought it after a string of package thefts in the neighborhood. I used to complain that he watched too many home improvement shows. But the camera had a wide view of the driveway, the front walk, and part of the side entrance near the guest room. I scrolled back through the footage from the afternoon Melissa had moved my folder. At first, there was nothing unusual. Melissa carrying laundry. Melissa taking out trash. Melissa bringing in groceries. Then, at 2:17 inches the afternoon, I saw her leave through the side door carrying my brown accordion folder. She was not going to the car. She was walking toward the detached garage. I watched her disappear inside. 9 minutes later, she came out empty-handed. My heart began to pound. I grabbed my cane and made my way through the back door. The garage still smelled like oil, old wood, and the peppermint cleaner William used to keep on the shelf. His workbench stood beneath the window exactly as he had left it. A stack of paint cans sat in the corner beside a box of Christmas lights. I searched slowly. The cabinets, the tool chest, the shelves, nothing. Then I noticed the old metal filing cabinet behind the workbench. William used it for appliance manuals, warranty cards, and receipts he could never quite bring himself to throw away. The top drawer was locked. I knew where the key had been. A small hook beneath the bench. But the key was gone. I stood there in the dim garage, staring at that locked drawer. Melissa had hidden something in my house. She had taken the papers that proved I was capable. She had taken copies of the documents tied to my home. And she had already scheduled a meeting to discuss putting me under someone else's control. But she had made one mistake. She thought I was too frightened to look. And the next morning, I was going to find out what she had locked away. The next morning, I did not go into the garage alone. Arthur Bell had made that very clear when I called him from my kitchen. If your daughter has taken documents or placed documents in that cabinet, he said, I want a neutral witness there. Do not force the lock yourself. So Mrs. Daniels came over before 9 o'clock, carrying coffee and wearing the sensible shoes she used whenever she expected trouble. Arthur sent a locksmith named Mr. Ortega, who arrived in a white van with a clipboard and a patient expression. He examined the old filing cabinet, asked whether I owned it, and waited while I confirmed that I did. Then he opened the top drawer in less than 2 minutes. For a moment, nobody moved. The drawer contained my brown medical folder, my blue envelope, copies of my driver's license and social security card, a printout of my home's estimated market value, and beneath all of it was a thick manila folder with a label written in black marker, Rebecca Clark Guardianship. I felt Mrs. Daniels take my arm. Arthur had instructed us not to touch anything more than necessary. So Mr. Ortega photographed the drawer exactly as he found it. Mrs. Daniels took pictures too. Then I carefully opened the manila folder. Inside were pages that made my hands go cold. Melissa had written a list of incidents she claimed proved I could no longer care for myself. Forgot to turn off stove. Confused about doctor appointment. Unable to manage mail. Suspicious and hostile toward family. Misplaced important financial documents. Every lie had been written as though it were a fact. There was also a draft petition asking the county probate court to appoint a guardian over my medical and financial decisions. The petitioner's name was Melissa Clark. Under the section marked, Reason for Emergency Intervention, someone had typed, Mrs. Clark has demonstrated diminished capacity following a recent fall and may be vulnerable to financial exploitation. I read that sentence 3 times. Melissa had taken my documents, hidden them, and then planned to use their disappearance as proof that I could not manage them. That was when the situation stopped feeling like a terrible misunderstanding. It became a plan with a paper trail. At the bottom of the folder was a letter from an attorney's office I did not recognize. The letter confirmed an appointment for the following Monday. The same appointment notice Melissa had taped to my front door. But it was not a meeting for me. It was a meeting Melissa had arranged to discuss filing for guardianship over me. Arthur came to my house within an hour. He sat at the kitchen table, looked through the photographs, and read every page slowly. He did not speak until he had finished. Then he looked at me. Rebecca, this is serious. I know. The first thing we will do is notify the probate court that you are represented by counsel and that you dispute any claim of incapacity. The second is secure your identity, bank accounts, medical records, and property documents. The third is preserve this evidence. Can she still file something? She can file a petition? Arthur said. Anyone can ask a court to review a concern, but filing is not the same as proving it. And the evidence she created may raise questions about her conduct. I looked down at the missing medical assessment. The 1 page Melissa had removed was now back in my folder. Dr. Lynn's conclusion was clear. No cognitive impairment observed. Patient demonstrates intact memory, judgment, financial awareness, and ability to understand and communicate healthcare preferences. That page was not just a piece of paper. It was the truth Melissa had tried to hide, because it ruined the story she needed people to believe. Arthur called Dr. Patel's office. Dr. Patel agreed to send a signed letter confirming that he had never found me incapable of making my own medical decisions, and that Melissa had requested a capacity letter without evidence to support it. The Rehabilitation Center sent certified copies of my complete evaluation. My credit union confirmed that Melissa had not been added to my accounts. But someone had called twice, asking about transfer limits and whether a power of attorney could be accepted electronically. The county recorder's office confirmed no deed had been filed. Not yet. But the clerk also found something Arthur had not expected. 3 days earlier, an online request had been made for a certified copy of my deed. The request used Melissa's email address. That evening, Arthur helped me send a formal letter to Melissa. It was short. It told her to return every original and copy of my personal, medical, and property documents. It revoked any authority she believed she had to act for me. It directed her not to contact my doctors. bank, insurance company, or any legal office on my behalf. And it said that any future communication should go through Arthur's office. I stared at the letter before signing it. Do I really have to do this? I asked. Arthur did not pretend the question was easy. You do not have to stop loving your daughter, he said. But you do have to stop leaving your life unprotected. So, I signed. The next 2 days were quiet. Too quiet. Melissa did not call. She did not text. She did not come by the house. That silence had a different feeling than the silence in Dr. Patel's office. It was not guilt. It was calculation. On Friday morning, Arthur called. Melissa has filed an emergency petition, he said. I sat down at the edge of my bed. What does that mean? It means she asked the court to appoint a temporary guardian before a full hearing. She claims you are at immediate risk of being exploited and unable to manage your affairs. I almost laughed at the cruelty of it. The woman trying to exploit me had asked the court to protect me from exploitation. Arthur continued. She attached her written statement, the incident list you found, and a copy of the partial medical packet, the one without the last page. Yes. My mouth went dry. But we have the complete records, he said. We also have the security footage, the locksmith's photographs, the original packet, and Dr. Patel's statement. The court scheduled a hearing for Monday morning. Monday. The same day Melissa had planned to take me to that meeting. Only now, she would have to stand in front of a judge and explain why she had removed medical evidence from my folder. I spent the weekend trying not to think about it. Mrs. Daniels stayed close. She did not hover. She simply came by with food, checked the locks, and sat with me on the porch while we watched cars pass down the street. On Sunday afternoon, I found one of William's old sweaters in the hall closet. It still smelled faintly like cedar and the shaving soap he used for years. I held it against my chest and remembered something he had said after his own mother became ill. Getting older doesn't make a person less human. He told me, it just makes it easier for other people to decide they know better. At the time, I had thought he was talking about his mother. Now I understood he had been warning me about the world. Monday morning came gray and wet. Arthur met me outside the probate courthouse. I wore my navy dress, the one I had worn to William's memorial service, and later to Melissa's divorce hearing when she needed someone to sit behind her. It was not armor, but it helped me remember who I was. Melissa was already there. She wore a cream-colored blouse and held a leather notebook against her chest. She looked tired, smaller than I remembered. For one dangerous second, I saw the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Then she walked toward me. Mom, she said, you don't have to do this. I didn't start this, I replied. I was trying to protect you. You hid my medical papers. I didn't hide them. I put them somewhere safe. You removed the page that showed I was capable. Her eyes filled with tears. You don't understand what it's like watching you decline. I looked at her carefully. Melissa, I am standing here because I understand exactly what you tried to do. Arthur stepped between us gently. This conversation should happen in the courtroom. The hearing was held in a small room with wooden benches, fluorescent lights, and a flag in the corner. There was nothing dramatic about it. No audience. No music. No great speech waiting to rescue me. Just a judge. A court investigator. Melissa. Her attorney. Arthur. And me. The judge was a woman named Judge Hargrove. She had silver hair, a quiet voice, and the kind of face that made you feel she had heard every excuse in the world. Melissa's attorney spoke first. He said Melissa had been concerned about my safety after my fall. He said I had become suspicious of family members. He said I had misplaced important paperwork and was refusing reasonable assistance. Then Arthur stood. He did not raise his voice. He placed the complete rehabilitation assessment before the judge. He placed Dr. Patel's letter beside it. He showed the court the packet Melissa had submitted, missing its final page. He showed the photographs from the locked filing cabinet. Then he played the security footage. There I was on the screen, moving slowly through my own garage. There was Melissa, carrying my brown folder inside. 9 minutes later, leaving without it. The courtroom stayed silent. Arthur then handed Judge Hargrove a copy of Melissa's incident list. Beside it, he placed the security footage timestamps, my medical records, and statements from Dr. Patel and Mrs. Daniels. The petitioner alleges that Mrs. B.O. Clark misplaced important documents. Arthur said, "The evidence indicates that the petitioner removed those documents from Mrs. Epps Clark's access, hid them in a locked cabinet, and then used their absence to support an emergency claim of incapacity." Melissa's attorney looked at her. Not angrily, not kindly, just with the expression of someone realizing he had not been told the whole truth. Judge Hargrove turned to Melissa. "Miss Clark," she said, "did you remove the final page of your mother's cognitive assessment before submitting it?" Melissa shook her head. "No, Your Honor." "Did you take your mother's medical folder to the garage?" "I was organizing things." She was overwhelmed. "Did you prepare this list of alleged incidents?" "Yes. But did you verify them?" Melissa's face crumpled. "I was scared." Judge Hargrove paused. Fear can explain concern. It does not explain altering evidence. Melissa began to cry. Her attorney asked for a brief recess. The judge granted it. Outside the courtroom, Melissa came toward me again. This time, she did not look angry. She looked desperate. "Mom, please," she whispered. "I made mistakes. I know that. But I was drowning." I said nothing. My rent went up. I lost my job. Ava needs school clothes. And I couldn't. Her voice broke. "I thought if I could help you manage things, maybe I could stay in the house. I thought you wouldn't have to be alone, and I wouldn't have to be alone." There it was. Not an excuse. The truth beneath the excuses. She wanted my home. Maybe not at first. Maybe not in the beginning. But somewhere along the way. Her fear about money had turned my independence into an obstacle. "You could have told me you were struggling," I said. "I did tell you." "You asked for money? You did not tell me you were planning to take my life apart." She covered her face. "I never wanted to hurt you." "That is not enough. Melis, you did hurt me." When the hearing resumed, Melissa's attorney withdrew the emergency petition. Judge Hargrove denied it without prejudice, meaning Melissa could not simply return later with the same false claims and expect a different result. The judge also directed the court investigator to preserve the evidence and referred the matter for review because of concerns about document tampering and attempted misuse of medical information. It was not a dramatic sentence. No handcuffs appeared. No one was marched away. But the consequences were real. Melissa's petition was gone. Her path to controlling me had closed. And the record now showed that I had not been confused, incapable, or voiceless. I had been targeted. After the hearing, Arthur helped me take the practical steps I had put off. I changed the locks. I updated every password. I put a fraud alert on my credit file. He gave Dr. Patel and the Rehabilitation Center written instructions not to release information to Melissa without my direct consent. I updated my will and healthcare documents. I named Arthur's office as the contact point for any future legal questions. I chose Mrs. Blank Daniels as my emergency neighbor contact and my niece Tasha as the person I trusted to make medical decisions, only if I truly could not speak for myself. Tasha was 39. A nurse. And the kind of person who listened before she answered. When I called her, she cried. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Aunt Rebecca?" "Because I was embarrassed." I admitted. "Don't be embarrassed. You were deceived." That sentence stayed with me. For months, I had felt embarrassed by the fall, embarrassed by needing a cane, embarrassed by the fact that my daughter could look at me with concern and make me question myself. But needing help after an injury was not shameful. Wanting to keep control over my own life was not stubbornness. And trusting someone who betrayed that trust did not make me foolish. It made me human. Melissa returned the rest of my documents through Arthur's office. She also returned the spare key. Arthur told me that the court investigator had spoken with her about the seriousness of false statements in guardianship matters. Her attorney advised her to cooperate. I did not ask for every detail. I no longer needed to chase justice like a punishment. I needed enough truth to keep myself safe. 2 weeks later, Melissa asked if she could come by. I almost said no. Then I thought about what boundaries were supposed to mean. A boundary is not always a locked door forever. Sometimes it is a door that only opens when the person outside understands. They cannot walk in and take whatever they want. So I told her she could come on Saturday afternoon for 1 hour. No documents. No discussions about my money, my house, or my medical care. And no pretending nothing had happened. She arrived alone. She stood on my porch, with her hands clasped in front of her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I'm sorry." Not, "I'm sorry you were upset." Not, "I'm sorry things got out of hand." Just, "I'm sorry." I let the silence sit between us. "What are you sorry for?" I asked. Melissa swallowed. "For lying to Dr. Patel. For taking your papers. For making you feel like you couldn't trust yourself." Tears slid down her cheeks. "For acting like your house was something I could earn by taking care of you." That was closer to the truth. Not all the way there, but closer. "I love you," I told her. "That has never been the question." She began to cry harder. "But love does not give you access to my accounts. It does not give you access to my medical records. It does not give you the right to speak over me when I can speak for myself." "I know. If you need help, you ask honestly. You do not build a case against me." "I know." I nodded. "Then that is where we begin." She did not move back into my house. She did not get a key. She did not become my caregiver. She found part-time work at a grocery store outside town. And later, with help from a community employment program, she found a job handling inventory for a local home goods store. I was glad she found her footing, but I did not pay her rent. Not because I stopped caring, because I had finally learned that rescuing someone from every consequence can teach them to mistake your kindness for a resource they are entitled to use. Months later, I went back to Dr. Patel for my regular appointment. He looked over my chart, checked my blood pressure, and smiled. "You seem well, Rebecca." "I am," I said, and I meant it. My hip had healed. I still used my cane on icy days or when the arthritis acted up. But I had planted new hydrangeas by the back steps. And I hired someone to repair the loose stone that caused my fall. I also placed a small brass key hook beside the front door. Only one key hung there. Mine. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and William's old radio playing softly on the counter. The folder was back where it belonged. Not because paper makes a person safe, but because I knew what was inside it. I knew what I had signed. I knew who could speak for me. And I knew that dignity is not something your family gets to grant you when you are convenient. It is something you protect. One clear decision at a time. If this story reminded you that getting older does not mean giving up your voice, please like this video, subscribe for more stories of truth, dignity, and family justice, and share your thoughts below. What boundary would you set if someone tried to take control of your life? Pinned comment. Have you ever had to protect your independence from someone who claimed they were just helping? Share your answer below.